Hello, welcome to the GI at E3 podcast. We've gone visual for this one. So if you're listening to us audibly and want to see our lovely faces, join us on YouTube. These podcasts are going to be shorter, more frequent shows on the big stories of E3 or whatever you want to call this games event season. After this one, we'll be bringing on some special industry guests to help us with discussions, which we're all very excited about. But today we have the GamesIndustry.biz team with us. My name is Chris. I am head of Games B2B at ReadPop, which is basically head of GamesIndustry.biz. And I'm joined by the editor-in-chief of the website, 15-year games business veteran, James Batchelor. Hello, James.
Hello, you're making me sound much more experienced than I feel.
Maybe much older than you look. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm not bad. I'm bracing myself for the week ahead. Kind of last night was kind of the teaser, like, you know, the Summer Games Fest kickoff live, and I've been trying to wonder what like a digital E3 will feel like. And there I was last night, chopping vegetables for dinner with, Jeff on my phone, and like propped up on the side. It's like, yep, this is about the standard E3. This is not going to be any different to normal.
I was rocking my son to sleep whilst listening to whatever nonsense was going on. I mean, in the best possible way. We'll talk about that in a moment, because we also have the GamesIndustry.biz. I'm going to use the word GI news editor and award-winning journalist Danielle Partis with us. Hi, Danielle. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm doing well. I'm very tired. Yesterday was a long one, and I too was. I was making a curry and watching Jeff on the countertop,
nice.
Which was a very interesting experience. But we adapt.
I'm waiting for next year. We need to get a Twitter thread going of what people are cooking while watching Jeff.
Yeah,
curry for you, fajitas for me. Chris, what were you? Are you rocking the baby? That's not really cooking, but that's fine.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody was on the toilet. That's the one.
Someone was on the toilet.
And it's Danielle. Are you getting Ratchet and Clank today? Is this?
I am. Yeah. I'm getting it delivered in. I'm hoping it doesn't arrive while we're doing this. Actually.
Yeah, because you're just going to turn.
I don't want to miss
it. Yeah. Well, I mean, we are here to discuss the first set of developments during Summer Games Fest /E3. And I sort of think it makes sense to work backwards, particularly as we've already started talking about it, which is Kickoff Live, the first part of Jeff Keighley's Summer Games Fest. It'll be fresh in our minds. Danielle, what did you think? Was it everything you dreamed of?
It was good, yeah. I didn't know it was coming, and I don't think I was particularly hyped about it until I sat down and watched it. And you see everyone going off on Twitter and everyone having a good time about releases, especially the Elden Ring drop, because I am not a fan of Souls games really, but I just got excited because everyone else was excited about it finally being here. So yeah, it was pretty good.
Yeah, James, what did you were you hyped?
So hyped, so very, very hyped. No, last night kind of helped me set expectations. We've been talking about this for weeks, that like this is going to be a very kind of different E3 /Summer Games Fest. I'm going to now just shorthand as E3 because everyone does that anyway. It's going to be a very different kind of E3 or a different summer, in that we still don't know the full implications of the coronavirus pandemic on development. So we don't know like the number of reveals that would have been due this year that would have slipped. And I think like, this big Summer Games Fest kickoff live, lots of exclusive reveals, world premieres, and there was nothing that leapt out at me. The big thing that people are talking about is Elden Ring, which is a game that was announced 2 years ago. We've heard nothing about since. So you would hope there's some progress has been made in 2 years. And then Tiny Tina's Wonderland, which I am definitely looking forward to because I really enjoy the Tiny Tina character. But again, it's one of those things where like it leaked everywhere beforehand, and we only kind of got a teaser. I'm rambling here, and this is where I basically like cram all my thoughts in because I didn't get to be on our last podcast. Where last night in particular, we're seeing a lot of reveal of reveals. There's a lot of, you can see more of this later. And I get that because this is the kickoff, this is the opening, this is not the big show. The big stuff is going to come over the next few days, particularly over the weekend. But equally, like to gear up and it's like, oh, here's something really exciting, and I'm not going to learn anything about it. It's quite the roller coaster.
I have to say I was quite impressed. Like I I expected like a load of Among Us map packs and stuff, which we got, right? But yeah, you're right. It was teasers for the future, for a bigger reveal down the line, which I think is kind of the point, isn't it? It's like here's what's coming. But I have to say, like Elden Ring, I don't care about Elden Ring. I'm not a big From Software fan. I tried very hard with Bloodborne, but I know it's a massive thing, particularly in the US market. And it's a huge game, and every single reveal, it doesn't matter what it's about, even if it's a Pokemon Direct, there's people in the comments going Elden Ring. And so it's kind of a big deal. And I think it's quite good for Jeff anyway, to have got that and secured that in his show. And Borderlands is also pretty big. And, so I was quite impressed by the level of, he got some pretty big games. And obviously he brought out his mate Hideo Kojima. We knew that was going to happen. I wasn't expecting Death Stranding. And there was PlayStation. Like PlayStation aren't supposed to be here. And oh, look, they showed up with like 3 announcements. And Activision Blizzard was there with Call of Duty and Overwatch. And it was, they're not supposed to be here either. So it was kind of, there were a few things that made me go, this is pretty good. It was a bit long. And it also felt like E3, because I think I said to you, James, before this, that it was a bit Hollywood. E3 is a bit Hollywood. You always get like those, you get the Keanu Reeves moments and stuff. And you had Jeff Goldblum, and you had Ryan Reynolds, and you had Netflix, and you had sort of Fast and Furious and Stranger Things, and just these little moments which are quite TV and populist and stuff. And I don't really love that stuff generally. It's fine, but it felt E3, and I think that's why I was impressed. I wasn't expecting very much, and it was, I thought it was pretty good. But go on, James, what are you saying?
No, I agree. Like it did feel like E3. I think that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier. It's like it didn't feel much different. There's been a lot of questions as whether or not this year will feel different because it is digital only. It's like, and for the vast majority of people who are there, for everyone but the few thousand that go to LA, this is exactly the same experience that we're experiencing in a good way. Like, so it's like, okay, good. Like, and particularly after last year, not having this centralized 1 week's worth of announcements, it being all spread across the summer. Yeah, last night got me like looking forward to, like, oh, brilliant. I'm looking forward to seeing what comes the next night and the next night and the next night. So yeah, I thought Summer Games Fest was done well. The other thing I was trying to interject with was I wonder if Elden Ring will appeal to you a bit more. I got bored last night. I put the Twilight Princess reveal music from the original 2005 trailer over the Elden Ring video, and it works. And I think you might be a bit more interested now.
I just don't like games. I'm not very. I don't have any patience anymore for games that require patience. No. And it's not like I think I was very impressed by how Bloodborne looked and the whole idea behind it, but I just went, this isn't something that I can enjoy. Not at the stage in my life. I don't entirely sure if I ever could enjoy it. Was there anything that jumped out at you, Danielle, that sort of made you go, I want that? That sounds good.
I think that the big highlight for me was the Borderlands thing, because I absolutely loved Borderlands 2, and I put hundreds and hundreds of hours into it, but I didn't get Borderlands 3. I just sort of didn't have time. And while I absolutely loved Borderlands 2, I just think it's now part of like a pocket of my life that I'm not in anymore. So I'm going, oh, cool, new Borderlands. And then I'm thinking about all the people I used to play Borderlands with that I don't play games with anymore, and just sort of being a bit sad about it. But I probably will buy it anyway, because I loved the Tiny Tina DLC. I think that was one of the best things that they've done. And if it's more of that, I'm very excited.
It does sound like it's more like that, and I like it. I loved the Borderlands series. Like, I played the first one to death. I played a lot of the second one, and I'm kind of the same as you. Borderlands 3 is like, by the time this came out, it's like, I don't have time for this. I want to play this game, but it doesn't want to let me. There's just too much like side quests and grinding, and I just do not have time for it. But the Tiny Tina DLC is something I always wanted to go back to for Borderlands 2. I kind of wish there was like a character creator that let you just, level up whatever level you need for that DLC and just start that DLC. It looks like this game is going to be that on a larger scale. There were references in the release and the announcement that Tina's, as narrator, Tiny Tina is just going to change the rules and the conditions as she goes along, which is like a lot of that kind of spontaneity was what made that DLC so much fun from what I've seen of it. So yeah, definitely looking forward to that.
I never played Borderlands, despite the fact the PR once sent me an ice sculpture of myself to promote it, which is officially the weirdest thing I've ever been sent in my entire games industry. Also, it was sort of right at the heart of sort of the GMA Defiance sort of period in the game, which was not a fun period. And it was like, oh, you're going to post any pictures of this ice sculpture that we've made of you and shipped to your office, life size, by the way. Actually, it was taller than me. And you're going to take, no, I'm not going to. I don't think they're going to think I just. Oh dear, it was a weird. It was definitely very cool. I've never played it though, so for me it was 2 Point Campus because
shit.
Yeah, that for a similar reason. Like I remember, it seemed 2 Point. I never played 2 Point Hospital, even though I love Theme Hospital. And for the same reason, every time they announced a sim thing, which is only the second time, but every time they do something, I'm like, oh, I would love that because I used to love that. Similar thing to what you were saying about Borderlands. That was something that appealed to me. There wasn't much Nintendo there. There was Monster Hunter Stories, so that's the sort of thing that I go in for. And there wasn't much Xbox either. I know that they did the whole game, the digital trial indie trial thing, forgot the name of it, but there wasn't a lot of that there. But one of the things that jumped out at me because I'm doing an interview with the developer later on today was the deal that Sony signed with I need to get the name of the studio right.
Deviator?
Yeah, let's go with that.
Yeah.
Deviation. I think it's Deviation.
Yeah.
Deviation. They're the Deviators. They work there. Because I think that's quite cool because this is the third studio Sony have signed in less than 6 months, or about 6 months, who are like former developers of a massive franchise. So you've got Jade Raymond's studio, who's obviously Assassin's Creed and that kind of stuff, and then you've got the last studio they signed, the probably Monster Studio, best known for Destiny, the former Destiny people, and then they've got the Call of Duty Black Ops people now, and they sort of seem to be investing in the next. The game from those creators, whatever it may be, it's very early doors. Have really got in, and where you compare that to Microsoft, who are buying big established brands and franchises and studios, Sony are sort of going in at the ground level with these sort of new things. I think that's really interesting. I don't know if it's going to work or not. It largely depends on what comes out the other end. But it's now a trend. It's not just it's a bit of a coincidence, which is what I had with the last one. Now it's Call of Duty devs. So I thought that was cool. Even if it was just ultimately a business announcement. But
this is us getting our business heads on. Like the business announcements, I increasingly find more interesting. So like the Koch Media, I never know how to pronounce that. Like everyone says Koch, but I am reliably informed it's Koch. But the Koch announcement that they're creating a new publishing label, Prime Matter. So we've got an interview of that already on the site. And again, that was a reveal of a reveal because they talked about it and showed a sizzle reel last night. But then tonight, actually, like a few hours from recording now, they're going to do like an hour-long presentation of all the games involved.
9 games, isn't it? Isn't it like 9?
13 games, 7 of which are new IP. And that to me is exciting. So, right, we've got a new publishing label. There's a lot of new IP. Like new IP tends to get drowned out a bit at E3 because everyone's getting so lower budget or less prominent new IP gets drowned out.
Yeah.
Like Elden Ring is a new IP, but it's from Hidetaka Miyazaki and George R.R. Martin and from Software, and therefore it's a new IP, but with expectations already behind it. I mean, like completely fresh out of the blue new IP, it always kind of gets drowned out a bit. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing more of that and seeing whether it can stand out.
Yeah, new IPs. So the whole idea that new IP is really hard is actually sort of become a bit. I mean, it is hard when you're at E3 and you're competing with Call of Duty and stuff, but it's actually becoming a little bit more. I think actually it goes back to that first E3 after the consoles came out with Destiny and Watch Dogs and stuff, and it started to realize people. And Cyberpunk, I know it's based on a board game and it's by the people behind The Witcher, but that was kind of a new thing. And even we talked about Tiny Tina. Sure, it's a Borderlands spin-off, but it's a new. It's being presented as a new thing. People do like new stuff, but you have to stand out. And because there's a lot of stuff out there. So what, James, tell me, the Prime Matter stuff, because Koch got Deep Silver. So why is this?
I'll be honest, they weren't 100% clear on that. It was so they've been operating multiple labels for years. They've always had Deep Silver. They've had Raven's Court for a while. They acquired Milestone 2 years ago, and they've got Vertigo. And it kind of slots in that, like the AAA games tend to go through Deep Silver. The adventure and strategy games go through Ravencore. Milestone has always been racing even before Koch bought them, and then Vertical is now VR games. So I was like, well, what counts as a Prime Matter game? And they want to kind of keep it loose. They want to have a mix. They don't really want to do it that, like they pick a game specifically for the Prime Matter label. It's more, the way that he phrased it was more like it makes more sense to kind of scale up and expand what we're doing rather than trying to push everything through the labels we already have. The lineup they've shown so far, it kind of ranges from the big things like Payday 3 and a new Painkiller and a Port of Kingdom Come Deliverance, so like established IP, down to these really cool little new IP, so like Echoes at the End, Encased, and stuff like that. They want to do a mix. They want to do like, both mainstream and niche and stuff that's of a global appeal. And they want to get stuff that's globally developed. So like out of these 13 games, you've got some that are developed in Brazil, Iceland, Czech, Serbia, Russia, like markets that are not as prominent when it comes to knowing which developers are there. So it all kind of plays into this grander strategy of Koch wanting to kind of become a bigger more global publisher.
Yeah.
And kind of providing more content for that, and this seemed to be make sense for them. So I think we'll find out more tonight.
Well, I'm sort of, I just found it because I pay, when you say a load of new IP, new things from new people, I sit there and go, well, that's cool. I understand why I'd label that. But then you look at Payday 3, which actually in my head kind of does fit with Saints Row and Dead Island and Time Splitters. And I think, and why is that over here but not over there? But I mean, we can get into it.
I imagine that you didn't say as much, but I imagine that is to kind of give it kind of a headline name. Like if you're launching Prime Matter, here's Prime Matter with 7 new IP and a RTS spin-off of Crossfire, that South Korean MMO FPS that everyone loves. But not really, it hasn't really taken off in the West just yet. Like it's not going to get much attention. Whereas here's the first image of Payday 3, and it's 4 blokes on a roof wondering how to get down. It's not really.
I buy that game.
That's a bit more interesting. That's a bit more. That's going to get a lot more attention, particularly during E3 Summer Games Fest or whatever the hell we're in the middle of.
I do like Clemens. It's one of my sort of. I've not interviewed him for a long time, but I always used to enjoy interviewing Clemens. He was always such a, and I was always surprised when I got bought by THQ Nordic. It sort of showed where things have sort of gone wrong for them for a little bit, even though they had it. They bought all the THQ IP. I just realised now that basically Embracer Group now own THQ again, don't they? They've just rebuilt it because they own Deep Silver and then they own THQ Nordic and all that kind of stuff. Well, I mean, was there anything else that stood out? Are we going to go? Is it downhill from here? Or I
would hope not. I would really hope not. Like I said, if there were some decent reveals, but it didn't feel like anything exciting. This kind of felt like the stuff that would be a kind of all right, if it had been announced during all of the larger showcases or during the heart of the week.
Yeah, but I mean, we got a big Borderlands game, we got a big Elden Ring game.
Yeah, but those are teasers, aren't we? We talked about like that's a teaser for something that's going to be shown off later anyway. I mean, Gearbox has got an hour to show something off on Saturday or Sunday. I can't remember which one. The schedule is so packed and so messy. I can't keep track. But I don't like. It's like you said, like the last night's thing was very much kind of a here's what's coming up, but without giving away too much. So I'm hoping that this is going to be a very interesting week. I don't know if I'm holding out hope that this is going to be like one of the best E3s, kind of going back to what you guys were saying on the podcast last week. It's very kind of subdued. You kind of got to rein in your expectations. I'm going in with your kind of attitude, Chris, of I'm going to go in expecting it to be rubbish, and then I'll be pleasantly surprised when it's not.
Yeah. I mean, I expect some stuff from Xbox. I mean, the thing is, I'm such a Nintendo fan. I do like Xbox. I'm looking forward to that one as well. That I find myself waiting really to the last minute because that's when Nintendo is just going to drop up here at the end, which is classic Nintendo, keeping their normal slot. That I'm sort of from a personal perspective. But I watched last night and not a single thing outside of 2 Point Campus. Think I'm going to get that, but I did think it was pretty impressive. But we did our predictions last week, so I won't go down that route again. But I tell you what I thought was surprising was actually some of the release dates, because if you sort of sit back and look at the release lineup for this Christmas, you've got Far Cry and you've got Battlefield now, which we'll come on to, and there'll be a Call of Duty, and then you start getting there's Dying Light, and there's Grand Theft Auto, and there's Horizon, and then there's Halo, and then there's Pokemon. and you start thinking, actually, that's quite a good Christmas. Like if I'm a retailer, I'm looking at that thinking, that's all right, that is. And then first Christmas of the consoles as well, it should be looks quite good. And then you sort of get into January, and then there's Elden Ring and another Pokemon in January. And I thought, what's it? And there was, I think the Borderlands game's early as well, early in the year. So that's probably around March time.
By the end of the financial year. So by March.
Yeah. So maybe it's a classic old 2K have not done it for a while, but they used to have a slot at the end of February. They love to release games in. So for all the talk about the pandemic slowing things down, and we're definitely experiencing that right this minute. It does seem like those things are going to pick up come sort of September time, maybe. Does that something that were you surprised by the dates, Danielle?
Some things were a little bit closer than I thought they would be, especially Elden Ring. January doesn't seem that far away to me after this years of when is it coming? What is it? Kind of thing. I think Elden Ring and Arceus are on the same day. They come out on the same day, so that's an interesting one. But yeah, I don't think there was anything super surprising for me, really. But I have already forgotten half of the release dates already. So,
well, when it goes to the Elden Ring release date, the thing I'm more intrigued about is like not whether or not it'll be any good come January, but there was a reference in one of the announcements or the press release or something to that the Elden Ring is going to be explored beyond just games. We're going to find other ways to kind of release this and explore this world, which with the attachment of George R.R. Martin suggests book. But given that he hasn't written one in 10 years, or rather the one he was meant to be writing 10 years ago is still unfinished, I'm kind of not, I'm expecting the Elden Ring trilogy to have finished before he's even got the first book out.
He's not a young man anymore at this rate. Let's not go down that one. Well, let's. There's something else happened yesterday. Is that Microsoft? To be fair, they lifted the embargo. They did show us this a little bit earlier, but they did a pre-brief of sort of set the tone ahead of E3. And it was basically them talking about their strategy. And if you a regular reader of GamesIndustry.biz, nothing was really new in that at all. They said a lot of stuff about going beyond the consoles, putting stuff on PC and streaming. They want to be more accessible and inclusive. We've spoken to Dave McCarthy at Xbox a few times about that, and it's really good what they're doing there. And they talk about how cloud streaming is going to help them reach billions of players, and they're going to go into India and China and Japan, and just sort of because they've got mobile phones, they're going to put the games on the mobile phones, and that's going to be revolutionary. But they're still developing for consoles. They've got the most powerful console, the most affordable console. That's the whole pitch. And they also committed, if there's one thing it wasn't entirely new, they have said it before, but this is the first time they sort of said it in a sort of public way. And they also committed to trying to release one game every quarter, so every 3 months. What did you make of that, James?
I think that's sensible. I know, and you would hope so. Like with the sheer number of studios they've picked up over the last few years, 25, 27 Xbox game studios now, like internally, like, yeah, there should be more than enough there that you can have them on almost on a roster, or at least kind of shuffle release dates about depending on what the other studios are doing to have a decent game every quarter. And all right, no, it's not always going to be like an Elder Scrolls 6 or a Halo or a Gears of War, but even if you slip in like a Hellblade or a State of Decay or a Forza Horizon, Forza Horizon's a lot bigger, but a mix of titles. It's their biggest game, yeah. But like a mix of titles, or Psychonauts, for example, then a mix of titles, something decent every year to get people coming back to that Xbox ecosystem. I think that's a solid strategy. I think Disney Plus are kind of doing that now, like with the Marvel series. You had WandaVision like in January, so that's Q1. You then had Falcon and the Winter Soldier kind of March-ish, so Q2. Loki started in Q3. There will probably be a Mandalorian come Q4 or some sort of Marvel spin-off. I don't know. Like there'll be some sort of big series that keeps you coming back to that service.
Games are different though, right? You compare it to Disney Plus. Disney Plus sort of had a couple of weeks off and then another Marvel series, but that's because TV series are linear. You can watch Loki in an hour and you're done. You can't play Halo in an hour and be done. That's something that'll take you a bit of time. So I understand them not hitting us with something every month. But it was, it was. I think the thing is, this is the thing that Xbox, Rob Fay talked about it last week. This is the thing that Xbox is lacking. I love their strategy. Like, I think their strategy is brilliant. Billions, being more accessible, being more inclusive. Game Pass is a cool value proposition. It could change games in a good way. It could also undermine some business models, but we'll see how that develops. But the thing that made me the thing is, Xbox just haven't delivered the games. Like the whole generation, there've been some exceptions. You know, I'm a big Sea of Thieves fan, but quality-wise hasn't quite been always there. Quantity-wise, definitely not. Consistency, not at all. And some of the games they have announced are really far away, right? Fables, Perfect Darks, those games are teased, they're miles away. So we're sort of, and you know, if you listen to the fanboys on my Twitter, whenever I talk about it, PlayStation fans are, Xbox fans are telling PlayStation that all their games are just ports and really just PS4 games and blah, blah, blah. And then PlayStation fans are yelling at Xbox, well, what games have you got? It's a legitimate criticism, I think. It's a really cool console, but we're not seeing anything on it yet. And I think that's what we want from Xbox. And until they start showing that, or even delivering on those things, I think all of this is just a really cool sounding strategy. I mean, they're growing Game Pass. They are walking the walk. Like, they're buying studios. They're not just telling us they're going to do it and then not do it. But that was my takeaway.
The problem is as well, like the reaction to your interview yesterday. Like I shared your interview on Twitter, and I was immediately responded with a bunch of like industry people saying, well, yeah, they've been saying this for years though. Where are the games? They've been saying this for years. And the problem is, like, this is a long game strategy. It's not something you can suddenly go, they're not going to come out on Sunday and say, right, we're going to release a game every quarter, and for the next 4 years. It's not like you said, like Marvel, whenever they do, I keep on bringing it back to Marvel, but it's a good analogy. Marvel always say, right, here's phase 4, here's the billion miniseries and game and films and feature-length films we've got coming out between now and 2030, and that's easier to do because films are quicker to produce and not as prone to, like, you know, you don't have to completely like restart a film from scratch, or if you do, you're in serious trouble. Like, and they're not going to come out on Sunday and say, right, here's the games coming from every single studio for the next 5 years, because they can't do that. That's just not the nature of games development. And equally, as much as we're talking about, and I myself have said, like, oh, you know, they own all these different studios. Most of those studios are still working or have still been working on things. So the Bethesda ones that they finally now technically own, Arcane's still doing Deathloop for PlayStation 5. Like, you're not going to get an Xbox exclusive Arcane game for at least 3, maybe 4 years at the very least.
James, you and I will remember, because we're old, the Rare, when they bought Rare, and it, you know, the first like 3 or 4 games Rare made were for Nintendo, and then it took a while before Grab by the Goodies actually. Looking back on it, it wasn't that long before we got our first Rare game, but it just, development's now so much longer. So, you know, you're right, it's going to take a long time, and we know that, and that's the thing. Microsoft knows that, but I think that's the frustration at the moment. It's all talk. I think Game Pass has been good. You know, they are investing in stuff, they are buying studios, but until we start seeing the games, and they've got to be good, right? And I think that's the reason why it's an exciting promise. But I'm sorry, Daniel, do you have any? I'm just going to move on and say something else about this statement. Was there anything that?
No, I think you're absolutely right. But I'm sort of thinking about it now just purely from a consumer perspective, and I'm thinking about Halo and how badly it's gone over the last 5 or so years. Like, so much so that they've just left the last installment on the Xbox One, which wasn't the most popular console, and it's just sort of died there. Are you guys big Halo fans?
No, my brother is, and it seems to be all the Halo people are just playing the older games, the anniversary. Yeah, that's the big Halo game of the moment, from what I understand. It's the ones that 343 didn't make. So I'm so interested in what they've got to show, because the reveal that they did about 6 months ago didn't go down well on the internet with Halo fans. So I'm very curious to see if it looks any different, whether they've taken that feedback on board, and whether they're actually going to hit that release date. Because I'm suspicious. How long has it been in development now? About 100 years. It's but that's the thing, right? It's they've got to get the quality right. They can't just push it out because it's been a while, which is they delayed it a year in the first place, but we'll see. I mean, the other thing,
if there are still problems, I wonder if they'll release the campaign or the multiplayer around the anniversary, and then the other half will come at a later date.
The thing is, I actually quite like the look of it. I know it didn't look visually stunning, like, oh, this is really impressive, but I actually thought it looked quite fun. It looked like it ran smoothly. It felt a little bit Halo-like. I've not played Halo since Halo 3. But I thought, oh, I might jump back in on this one. That was my response. And then I saw the internet and I went, oh, well, I got that wrong. But you know, I'm sure they'll get there. The other thing that actually, and I'll be honest with you, this annoyed me. Like I'm conscious of the fact that I've said quite a few positive things about PlayStation lately, and I'm accused of being a fanboy whenever I back or criticize anyone. But I actually had to say I didn't like this when Phil Spencer did a little bit at the end where he basically took a pop at PlayStation. He did it in a few ways, but the most notable way is when he said, talked about the fact that, you know, they're bringing games across platforms. And he said, others bring console games to PC years later, not only making people buy their hardware up front, but then charging them a second time on PC, which I didn't like it because for starters, it's a bit of a tenuous thing, right? It's just like if you've got the game on PlayStation 4 or 5, you're not going to go and buy it on PC a year later. It's to a different audience. But the thing that made me go, it's just console war rhetoric. And when you talk about how Xbox, Phil Spencer goes, we need to move away from this. It's not just about competing on platforms. We're all friends. We're all part of the industry. We're all colleagues. And this console war stuff is toxic and bad. And I completely agree when he says it. And then he says stuff like that, which just inflames the fan bases again. And it's just like, you're just as bad. It wasn't as, I've seen it a lot worse, right? You know, and the PlayStation did it quite badly at the beginning of the PS4. They were quite cruel to Xbox. But, you know, there was a few things like when Xbox did a tweet about the fact that they will definitely let you know when the pre-orders are going live and stuff like that. It was all little digs, but I thought, I don't like it. Just, we need to get away from that kind of chatter, because the thing is, they are trying different things. And so I didn't like that, but it's I'm sure the media loved it though, in terms of clicks and traffic and conversation on their forums.
The console war rhetoric, particularly around E3, always, you know, brings up some great kind of moments and memes and stuff. Like I always remember the Sony game sharing after the Xbox One reveal, that you could not share games across consoles, and it was just two Sony people like handing a game to each other. There was a website. I think there was a website around. I think it was shortly after Kinect was come out, and Sony did PlayStation Move, and there was a website about the glory of buttons. And how satisfying buttons are, because
I don't mind the teasing. I don't even mind the banter. There was a time when, right at the beginning of E3, Sony poached a guy called Steve Race from Sega, right? And Sega was like number 2 to Sega, and they moved him to handle the launch of PlayStation in the US, the very first one. And Sega used to be really like, they used to post letters under the door of retailers. So all the retailers that Nintendo flew over to E3, Sega would post little leaflets underneath their doors saying, if you're thinking about buying a N64, then your head's in Uranus, or something like that, or something like it was genuine. Like it was a bit underhand. But then Steve Race, when he did the same thing to Sega. He went back and did it to Sega. So he started he popped Sega's inflatable Sonic, and it was all just. But I kind of find that funny. Like, I thought that's kind of banter. It's all a bit of fun. It's all a bit of competition. But then. And then you just delve into it, and the anger and the insults about this, and it's just a games console. They're all going to be fine. They're all going to be very successful. Sony are going to sell a lot of consoles. Xbox are going to do a lot of subscriptions. Nintendo are going to make millions from just one Mario Kart game it released 8 years ago. They're all going to be fine. Just, it's all well and good trying to you have to I understand people want to justify their console, because they may only have one. Most people do, and they have to say, well, this is why I like my console better than your console. But that's not. There's a little bit of, my football team's better than your football team, but then there's the toxicity, which also exists in football. And I just always think it's a good idea for that kind of thing to be inflamed by the companies. But anyway, that was my thing. I guess I'm used to it. Every time I do a tweet, because it's all new consoles that come out, every time I do a tweet about which consoles sold, how things are performing in the market, my Twitter feed gets just flooded with people retweeting it, going, Xbox had a good month, PlayStation had a good month, just people trying to somehow, as if that matters. But anyway, the other thing, the final thing, and this is actually from Wednesday, Battlefield was revealed, or teased, I guess. They're going to show more in time. I'm not a massive Battlefield obsessive, but I think the big thing was that it's not going to have a battle royale mode. It's not going to have a single player mode. Danielle, I don't know if you're a Battlefield fan. Was that
not really. I used to play a lot of those kind of war games as in my sort of teen years. I kind of moved away from it because it's just like shooting through bunch of people nonsensically. Just doesn't really appeal to me anymore. But it looks really nice. It looks like something that's a little bit different. It was interesting though, because it felt to me like a game that would come out for free and compete with other multiplayer games. But I saw that it was going to be about $60 at launch just for a multiplayer game. And I personally, I'm like, I'm not paying 60 quid just for a multiplayer game. But lots of people will. So maybe it'll do all right. Don't know. What do you guys think? Did you watch the trailer?
I watched the trailer. I was thoroughly unenthused by the trailer. But
I'll be honest,
not my genre.
I'll be honest. Whenever I see something that's the sort of deals with like the climate crisis has destroyed the world, I'm like, yeah, it's too real. I can't deal with this.
But don't forget, it's not social commentary. It's not social commentary.
Political.
Well, it's just, I didn't realize it's the same storyline to Splatoon. Splatoon is also about the world has been destroyed and then this is what happened. So
it also seems to be the same storyline as the upcoming Perfect Dark, but at least that one we know it's aliens, not our own fault.
It's it's just a bit too real. I can't handle it. But I tell you what, for me it's interesting because I've been a little bit obsessed looking into, because when Nintendo, this is a really weird tangent, but when Nintendo stopped making the Mario collection, everyone was like, what the hell's wrong with Nintendo? Do they not want money? And I started to realize that in the charts at one point there was 5 Mario games in the top 20, and I suddenly realized they were all competing with each other. And in a world today where games live on, sort of releasing a game that competes with a game that's loads of people are still playing doesn't make sense. And EA will have the data better than me. So if they didn't do a battle royale mode in Battlefield, I have to assume that's because they know a lot of their battle royale players are playing Apex Legends or something like that. And so they don't want to hurt Apex Legends by splitting that audience or even pulling some of them away. They'd be better off putting some Battlefield stuff in Apex Legends than launching a battle royale mode. And Battlefield, if single player games, Sony are doing with single player games, or look at the quality of those. To invest in a really good single player game is going to cost a lot of money. And although EA definitely can afford it, would they be better off putting that into a big focus game from BioWare or something like that rather than get the DICE team on it? I kind of interested in the way these games now live forever, and sort of building it from that sort of it sort of becomes that actually we don't need to chuck everything in here, because if we do, we end up just pulling audiences away from, because there's the idea of buying a Battlefield game every 2-3 years and then getting another one sort of fading away. I do expect it won't be long before we don't have a Call of Duty game every year, for that very reason. So I thought I don't, but as Danielle said, PlayStation, EA with their money. I'm always I'm not one of those people that's quite like games cost more to make, and it's sort of spiraling, and the audience isn't necessarily growing, and it's harder to attract them, so you need to sort of make up the cost somehow. But when it's a game that's full price and then you've got the battle pass system or whatever, I just sit there and go, well, I mean, I don't understand having a hybrid model, but the hybrid model means cheap base game and battle pass system, or cheap battle pass system, or cheap, it's like it's not, but I guess, they're a big public company.
Depends on their roadmap for it, isn't it? Like, it's not like I doubt there'll be another Battlefield in, say, 2 years' time. Battlefield used to be on a 2-year cycle, didn't it? But there was always like another Battlefield on the way. And so I can't imagine there's another Battlefield heading anytime after this. This will probably be very kind of events driven and season driven. So that battle pass will last a while. Like, this is probably more akin to something like, let's say, Rainbow Six Siege. Like, yes, it's a multiplayer only game, but it will last for, I mean, blimey, when did Rainbow Six Siege come out and people are still buying the damn thing?
Yeah.
Like, I've been treated, and they must have data as well, like that says, NAF people play the campaign. We pour our heart and soul into doing this incredible 6-hour campaign that only 30% of people get through the first half. We just won't bother. The one I'm intrigued about was it Black Ops 4, Call of Duty Black Ops 4, that didn't have a campaign? How well did that sell compared to the other Call of Duties? Because I remember there being a fuss around the fact that it wasn't going to have a campaign. And me thinking like that is the only reason I even consider a Call of Duty game, is because I am not a multiplayer gamer, but I'll give the campaign a go. So that's an instant not sale for me.
I will say that from what I understand, the Black Ops 4's lack of a multiplayer game wasn't a business decision, or it was we're not gonna be able to make this. It was more a result of necessity rather than a thing, and the fact that every Call of Duty game since has had one, with the exception of Warzone, of course. But there's normally a timer in the corner of this. I have no idea how long I've gone on for, but it's probably doesn't sound like it's a shorter one today. But we are doing a lot more podcasts over the next week. We've got some special guests. I think we can name a couple. We've got Cassia Curran from Wings, Guhar Bala from Beelan Studios joining us. There's a couple of other surprises as well, which we'll announce when we're ready to. And you're hoping to have one over the weekend, if not definitely Monday. But until next time, you can listen to us on your podcast platform. If you're watching us on YouTube and you think, I don't really have time to watch this, if you think I'd love to see James Batchelor's face, then great. Join us on YouTube and watch us there.
I guarantee you the one reveal people want from this week is not my face.
Imagine. Get Jeff Keighley on to introduce it.
Where's the James Batchelor mask in Among Us, eh?
Yeah. Oh, goodness. So thank you for joining us. And I'll see you probably in the next couple of days.